Okay, we have come to the end of the course, Ecology and Society. Um, in the past, 4 weeks, like beginning from 9, 10, and 11, 12 weeks, uh, we'll quickly go through some of these few weeks course content briefly, and then I'll come to some of the questions which are being raised now. In the last couple of weeks, what we have done is uh, uh, revisiting the philosophy of deep ecology. Okay, now within this particular theme, revisiting the philosophy of deep ecology, we had at length discussed about the uh, debate of the preservationist and that of the biocentric versus the imperial or the utilitarian or anthropocentric. We had also, to some extent, revisit the philosophy of deep ecology, which was uh, put forward by Arne Næss, the none other than Arne Næss, the Norwegian philosopher. So, in deep ecology, what we generally looked at is how the nature of uh, engage in questioning a deeper thinking, that is the relationship between human and nature. Now, if you compare deep ecology with shallow ecology, which is again different from, or which is antithetical to the idea of deep ecology. Now, shallow ecology is pretty much based on the idea of anthropocentrism or anthropocentric. So, anthropocentric believe in the idea that human exists outside nature. So it sort of, in some sense, based on this Western scientific culture, it looks at the binary, that is how nature and culture is different, and to what extent human society engage in appropriation of nature, that is by seeing nature from a very utilitarian perspective. Now, I'm not going into detail because we are just merely, roughly trying to refresh our mind in some sense. We have some questions coming up about the exam pattern, so please bear with me. I'll just quickly, summarize the courses, the contents which we have, and then I'll come to it very quickly. So till then, you guys hang on. Okay. Uh, in the that I mean the we had also talked about or look into the systematizations of Gandhian ethics, because Gandhi has not really vocally talked about a different ecological approach as such, but then Arne Næss in some sense borrowed the idea of this uh, Gandhian ethics, particularly the idea of seeking truth, that is, to engage in deeper questioning. Because Nash was also very much keen on the very idea of self realization. Okay, so that is to engage in a deeper thinking or questioning. So that's in some way the gist of what we have discussed in the within the very theme of deep ecology and social ecology. And if we look at social ecology, that is Can I have the board here? Now, the second theme which we dealt at length is social ecology. Now, this particular term, social ecology, is coined by Murray Bookchin, that is, in his book, Ecology and Revolutionary Thought. Now, this particular book is, in some sense, the study of a reciprocal relationship between the human society and the ecological infrastructure. Now, what does Bookchin tries to argue in this particular book, or his approach within this particular, concepts called social ecology? Because social ecology, in some sense, claims that the environmental crisis or ecological crisis which we encounter is nothing but a result of hierarchical organizations of power and the authoritarian mentality rooted in the structure of society. So for him, ecological crisis is nothing but which is rooted within social problems. Or in order to solve this environmental crisis, we need to address the social problem first, because the Western ideology of dominating the natural world, in some sense, arises from these social relations. And the domination of nature by man stems from the very real domination of human by their fellow humans. So, social ecology aims to replace the mentality of domination. That is, it tries to espouse and bring forward this ethics of complementarity. That is, how a kind of communitarian or an egalitarian form of society should be inculcated. Because the capitalist society or capitalist mode of production very strongly emphasizes this principle of grow or die, that is survival of the fittest. So in such an environment or situation, it becomes impossible for people to, like, and maintain a status quo, or in some sense bring in this ethics of complementarity. So therefore, the problem lies in the structure of society, which needs to be addressed first. So once this idea of, the ethics of complementarity is being popularized, there is a possibility there can be an alternative to address this growing environmental crisis which we encounter. So the third theme, which we had discussed in the last 4 weeks is the ecological feminist philosophies. Yeah. Now, what does ecological feminism talked about, or what exactly is ecological feminism? It is a variety of different feminist perspective which focuses on the nature of the connections between the domination of women, that is, uh, or in some sense the other suppressed humans, and the domination of nature. So there is this twin process of domination, that is the domination of women on the one hand and domination of nature on the other hand. So this is something which the ecological feminist tries to capture. So the ecological feminist philosophy is in some way a philosophical approaches which emphasize the variety of different connections between feminism and the environment. So This twin domination of women nature is a value duality, according to many of these feminists. So it also, in some sense, addresses how nature and women's are, often perceived to be producers of life. That is, nature is often described in female and in a more sexual terms, and how nature is also being perceived as something which can be appropriated, or maybe in terms of being controlled, tamed, or maybe mastered. And engaging at length on these philosophical dimensions of how nature and women are being, interrelated. We had also discussed about the Chipko environmental conservation movement in India, where women actually played the forefront in this particular movement. We have, people like Gura Devi, and then so and so forth, who have at length utilized the Gandhian notion of you know movement, or maybe they use Gandhian tools of, uh, engaging in this environmental movement. Now, the fourth one which we had discussed uh, is indigenous knowledge or traditional ecological knowledge. Now, over here we sort of tries to look at the differences, that is, from the works of the uh, anthropologist Levi Strauss, in which he tries to look into the different forms of knowledge systems, of that of the scientist and the mythical thought. That in he gave uh, an example of how these, of the how the brachylates functions. That is, the scientist and the brachylator. So it also, tries to distinguish that different forms of thought process or thinking uh, involve in these two different dimensions, and none of them is neither superior or inferior, but they are independent and different from uh, their own approaches. Now, we also know that what Levi Strauss has argued by saying that the scientist engages in creating events, that is, changing the world by means of structures, while on the other hand, the bricolayer creates structure by means of events. And the bricolayer also make creative use of resources available at hand, and it is a design approach, while the scientist is guided by theoretical constructions. So the bricolayer pretty much engages with the idea of trial and error. It is a much more a practical or first-hand experiences which individuals usually engage into. And the fifth point, which we had talked about, is the traditional knowledge and natural resource management. Over here, we had at length dealt with the kind of, a conversational kind of journey where the noted ecologist or environmental scientist P.S. Ramakrishnan engaged into. He wrote a book called Once and Two Worlds: An Ecological Journey, which is, written in a conversational kind of uh, a dialogue which is engaged between uh, that of a scientist and uh, a farmer who is more into engaging with the practical kind of knowledges. So the scientist in some way whose idea or whose knowledge is very much confined in the from the so-called textbook knowledge, whereas the farmer which is practicing that particular knowledge in the field. So uh, you can actually go through this particular book and have a look at how these different knowledge systems functions differently in different settings. Okay. Now the sixth theme which we had looked into is ecological knowledge. Sorry. Subsistence and livelihood practices. This I had discusses by taking the case of uh, the Kuki community, which had uh, been for generations engaged in traditional forms of farming, and over here one can also look at or relate the kind of knowledge system which they have, and then which they have been practicing for generations, and to locate the idea of livelihood on the one hand, and on the other hand this idea of sustainability. And then we can also bring in that the final theme which we talked about, that is the debates on shifting cultivation, uh, by asking a question such as, is it a form of sustainable natural resource management? Now different forms of scholars across disciplines or maybe different institutions have different opinions regarding shifting cultivation, which is uh, locally termed as zooming, mostly in the northeastern region, and many of the indigenous communities has been practicing such forms of farming system or cultivations. Now, many of the ecologists or maybe the government, forest officials or environment experts often tends to have a negative perception of these practices. But as time evolved, there are also like people, the noted ecologist P.S. Ramakrishnan, who had at length done an extensive work in the Northeast, and the book which we have of course discussed. If you look at many of their works, they are actually talking about how this form of farming or this shifting cultivation is in some sense more sustainable in nature. So you please look into the slides and at the same time the lectures, and I'm sure you would take a stance in some way when you eventually finish listening the lectures. At the same time those ideas will definitely emerge. Now I'll be happy to look into some of these questions. The exam pattern, I think I had also discussed in the last live session, that it will be a multiple choice questions, and which of course is objective in nature, and you'll have around about like 100 questions, uh, of which is an MCQ, of course. Four multiple choices will be given, and then you have to respond accordingly. And by now you are familiar with the weekly tests, the weekly questions. More or less, the question will be different, but the pattern of the questions which are being already circulated will be more or less same. um, I think there's no minus marking as far as I know, and to be honest, the questions are of course being submitted, but we are not the one who is going to run the show. It is being taken care of by a different committee as such. Uh, there's a question on please educate scope of NPTEL certification industry and government job. So I think this can be asked to the people who are involved in the NPTEL. And there's a question from Manjit Kumar: why we are switching to GM food and pesticide agriculture, which not only hamper ecology but also health in long run? Yeah, definitely. These are some questions, which we as a researcher needs to engage and look into, because uh, unlike the kind of discussion which I had talked about in ecological knowledge, subsistence and livelihood practices, which are mostly practiced by the indigenous communities, they have sort of drifted away or shift to a much more market-oriented cash crop. So to appropriate, nature, you have to actually engage in a non-traditional form of farming, and therefore, in order to meet the rising demand, so in order to have that supply, people usually engage in this non-traditional mode, that is by using chemicals, fertilizers, so on and so forth. And the green revolution, no doubt, at certain point of time was considered to be successful. But after a few decades, I think there are many studies which are being done in states like Haryana, Punjab, so on and so forth, that the green revolution actually has resulted to many ecological disasters in terms of desertifications of soil, and then it is considered to be uh, affecting the ecosystem to a large extent and biodiversity of that areas. So now, definitely, I totally agree with that switching to GM food, pesticide agriculture, so on and so forth, is definitely trying to hamper the ecology in the long run. I think most of the queries are more on how um, the exam patterns are going to be looked at. And there's a question on human ecology and human geography, which relationship between the same. Uh, Human ecology, I think, is more or less based on this idea of which follows the anthropological uh, discipline, whereas human geography is, I think, a sub-discipline or a sub-branch within geography, and it will definitely takes into account more of the study of demography, or how human population is related to their immediate environment, so and so forth. So इतना मॉर्निंग कैसे एग्जाम सेंटर पहुंचूंगा, so and so. I think on that part I have no answer to tell you. So there are some queries regarding the study materials. I'll definitely ensure and then have a vote with my TS, and they will definitely upload the required readings, so that part will be taken care of. Okay. Scope of NPTEL certification. So you can sort of like drop in a mail. I'll forward to those people who are taking care of this, looking after this. Okay. So with that, I hope you all have uh, enriched yourself, and then we still have time. Today is 11th, so the exam is on 18th, right? So then feel free to drop in a mail, and we'll ensure to respond to your queries. Okay, thank you so much.